All right, folks, welcome to another installment of Sports with Joe and Ish. I'm the sports editor at the San Marcos Daily Record, Joe Vazzelli, and I'm here with our go-to man as far as the Rattlers go, Ishmael Johnson. Both Texas State and San Marcos were busy this weekend on the gridiron. Texas State pulls off a big victory in many ways to start their conference season, 35-30 over Idaho. The Rattlers, they fought awful hard in the game, but unfortunately, San Antonio Alamo Heights was just a little bit too tough for them. They fall 43-7. We're going to break down both games and prepare you guys also for two big matchups coming up with UL Lafayette for Texas State as well as Floresville for San Marcos. But before we do that, we're going to go to a short break.
American-made classics at Dick's Classic Garage Car Museum. Marvel at underwater life from a glass-bottom boat tour at Aquarina Center. And explore the cave at Wonder World Park, San Marcos, Texas. We'd love your company.
Welcome back, folks. We're going to start out by talking about Texas State. Of course, as we talked about earlier, they beat the Idaho Vandals 35-30 to start off their conference season. And Ish, it was another one of these games where they had a big lead in the second half. They kind of invited the other team back in the game, and they really had to survive it. Of course, the big story from the game, Terrence Franks running for 284 yards. It's career high for him. He ended up getting within 30 yards of a school record. But like we talked about, it was another survival game at the end. Are we going to continue to see this from what we've seen so far,
For their sake, I hope not. For Coach Franz, I think his health's sake, I don't think he wants to see any more of these games. But, that game should have kind of been squashed in the third quarter probably. They were up by three scores at one point. It just looked like they had the game in control. And I don't know if it was fatigue, 3 straight long games coming back off that 2-game road trip. I don't know if it was just fatigue. The defense, no, I think it was fatigue because Coach Fran in the press conference talked about the offense churning out a lot, only about 17 plays, not taking a lot of time, and that put the defense right back on the field. I believe it was around a 40-17 play differential between the defense and the offense. So it's, the defense just got tired near the end because the offense didn't have to run many plays to score because Terrence Franks would get the ball and he'd go 90 yards, 60 yards, and he'd score and the defense would be right back out there. So I don't know. I guess I would assume with this long rest coming up that, they'll get rejuvenated. I don't think this will be a trend, but it definitely that 3-game skid where they blew leads in all 3 of them was definitely not a good sign for this team.
Sure, you look at the stats, Idaho has 33 first downs. Texas State only has 14 first downs in the game. Idaho has 523 yards to Texas State with 466. And you look at the stats, and you probably, if you hadn't watched the game, you would have thought, Idaho might have won the game. But as we've been talking about the last 3 weeks with Texas State, it just seems like they get up in these games, and the defense, for some reason, is wearing down in the second half. They have a really strong game in the first half. They're getting to Linehan. They have I believe 6 or 7 sacks in the first half. They're getting a lot of pressure, and then in the second half, it seemed like Idaho changed the game plan a little bit. Let's run. Let's try to dominate the time of possession, dominate the clock. And then they really started to get things together. And twice in that second half, Idaho cuts the lead to 5 points. They don't get any closer than that, but really had to survive. And what ends up being the game-winning touchdown, Tyler Jones runs 27 yards really out of nowhere on the play and picks up the big play there. They go up by 14 points. Idaho brings them right back, and Jamad Williams ends up sealing the game on an interception. But it just looks like this defense, it's going to have to be a big play defense. Yeah. They're going to have to get those turnovers, those sacks, because it seems like they're going to give up some yards on a week-by-week basis.
Yeah, we talked about the bend, don't break mentality that this defense is going to have because the passing defense was surprisingly there. They got to Matt Linehan, who, by the way, looks like he's going to be a great quarterback. And, 3 years under Paul Petrino, he was actually doing very well for a redshirt freshman. He had no protection because the Texas State was just in the backfield. Odiari was there. Even Mager came up with a couple sacks as well. And the pass rush was there, but just the passing, I think the cushion on the pass defense, I think that Thompson has that mentality of bend, don't break. Give up the 5 yards, but don't give up the 20 yards, things like that. The rushing defense, though, that's going to be a significant issue because when Texas State gets fatigued like that, the offensive line is going to be able to get that extra push on the defensive line and drive them back because we saw, like you said, Idaho going to that rushing offense more in the second half. to probably spare Linehan because he was taking a beating often in the first half. But that defense is going to have to probably hold on to that bend, don't break mentality until the big play comes up, like Jamad Williams' 2 interceptions, like a forced fumble or something like that to turn the game. Because with this offense, they're going to give up some yards because the defense is going to be out there a lot.
Sure, and I hear you folks clamoring on Twitter. A lot of you guys are talking about the fact that you'd like to see Texas State be more aggressive on offense. And I think there's a couple times we talked in the press box where they had the ball at the 40 or 50-yard line where I'd like to see them take that deep shot, maybe a play-action pass. Yeah. The defense might not be expecting it. Go for that shot. And I'd like to see them be a little bit more aggressive with the play calling. When they've got a chance to punch someone in the mouth, maybe finish them off, they've got to do it. Now, of course, the big play in the game that seemed to turn the game in Idaho's favor was Magers. Yeah. He's returning the touchdown or returning the punt. He gets it within the 20-yard line. The guy comes from behind and basically punches it punches the ball out. It goes right to the punter from Idaho, and he picks it up. And Coach Ferrand even said after the game he felt like that was their chance to maybe put the game away because the way it was looking, they were going to just score a touchdown pretty quick there with the way the offense was rolling. Yeah,
and I think that the people who want Coach Ferrand to be to call that big play, to call that. I think at times, you get that in your mind, but you got to remember this guy's been coaching for how long. He's never been the guy to step on the jugular, of a team and just go for the kill shot. He's always been the guy to, preserve the clock. He's going to remain conservative. There's no reason that he's going to change now. That's just his mindset. It's not a bad mindset. It's proven he's been a successful coach most of his career. So I feel that people that are clamoring for him to do something different at this point, what we presume may be his last stop, Texas State. He talked about retiring here eventually. I think that's a little too late. If this was, his second job, he was still a young coach, learning how to, design his play, design his offense. I think that would be warranted. But, he's set in his ways, and his ways have proven to work. So.
Yeah, and I think they're also trying to figure out how this offense is going to work. Yeah. It was strange. Navy, they dominate time of possession. They don't win the game. Tulsa, they really had time of possession for the most part of the game. They had to really struggle. And then this week, they had no time of possession. They still come out with the victory. So with this up-tempo offense, I think you're going to see that on a week-by-week basis. It's going to be weird how they win games. They're either going to put up a lot of yards and might not see as much time of possession, or it might go the opposite effect. So I think they're trying to figure out how to win from an offensive perspective. And I think people have to be patient with this offense looking forward. We're going to see, keep in mind, they're only 5 games into the new offense. They're only 5 games into a new defense this year with Coach Thompson. I think it's going to take some time, and they get these 10 days to prepare for UL Lafayette, and I think it'll be a good opportunity for them to really iron out the kinks and whatnot looking forward for the rest of the year. Yeah. Of course, we're also going to break down the Rattlers, and Ish, you were at the game. I was also at the game, and it just didn't seem – Alamo Heights is a really tough team, and it seemed like early they had some chances to maybe make the game interesting, but it just didn't seem to work out for them.
Yeah, I talked to Coach Soto after the game. The offense, when they went to the run, I think after last week's game, they got a little comfortable with passing the ball. And David Hamilton had 2 interceptions in the game. I think when they went back to the rushing, though, that really seemed to get through to the Alamo Heights defense. They had the ball inside on their first possession, I believe. They had the ball inside the 20, looking to score, and it was a possibility. They were going to go up 7-0. The penalties, though, Coach Soto kept talking about the penalties. That's what knocked him out of field goal range. Munoz ended up missing a field goal because he says that they just commit too many mistakes, and that's what the next step is for this team, in my opinion, and according to Coach Soto as well, just cleaning it up. They have the talent. Hamilton had, I believe, 242 rushing yards. It's sneakily because you look at the score, you're like, oh man, this guy still had almost a 250-yard rushing game. Kavion Garner had 107 yards rushing. So the offense was still producing when they went to the ground, and I think Alamo Heights is a good measuring stick for where they want to be eventually. That's where Coach Soto sees this team when they reach the peak, is being Alamo Heights, and I think that they played. I think it was. I don't want to say a moral victory, things like that. They put up yards. I just want to say that I think that was a good standard to set themselves to. It's like, we want to be here one day. Because I also want to bring up the sacks, though. They got to Dalton Banks, the Alamo Heights quarterback, I believe 4 times. No, I believe Sorry, about a couple times. I don't think they actually had sacks, but Jonas Nava was in the backfield. Isaiah Hernandez was in the backfield a bunch. Dalton Banks is just a big guy. He's 6'3", 200 plus for a quarterback. In high school, that's ridiculous. Tyler Jones didn't weigh over 200 at Texas State till about this year. So it was just they were facing a team that was on a different level. That's not a knock to the Rattlers at all.
Sure, and I know on the opposite team, but Dalton Banks was impressive. I mean, he's being recruited by a bunch of different schools, especially some schools around San Antonio, and I think that it showed that when you're going up against a senior quarterback, sometimes you're going to be in for a long game, and he seemed to be able to, when they needed to play, he was able to deliver for them. But to switch gears, of course, we have another team from Texas State who's off to a great start this season. The volleyball team with Karen Chisholm, they're off to a 6-0 start in the Sun Belt, and it kind of came out of nowhere just with how things ended non-conference season. They lose all 3 games at the Texas Tech Invitational, and you were there at the game on Saturday, and what really impressed you about what they were able to do in that game?
Just how dominant they looked against Lafayette. Lafayette was a team that beat Appalachian State, who was previously undefeated, and they were heading into the game like, oh no, look, they're about to face a team who knocked off an undefeated team, and Lafayette couldn't score 20. They couldn't get more than 20 points on them. So Coach Chisholm talked about, if you would have asked her about 3-4 weeks ago if they would have been undefeated, she would have thought no, just because this team was inexperienced. They're starting so many freshmen, so many sophomores, and in my opinion, I think that's kind of a benefit. When you face a team that doesn't, a lot of it's their first time in conference, they don't know any better.
Sure.
They don't have predisposed thoughts on a team. They're just going to go out and play. And it might not be the most polished, but they're going to go out and play. And that's sometimes what you have to do to win.
Sure, folks. We're going to go to a break. We'll catch you on the flip side where we'll talk about Texas State as well as San Marcos and previewing their upcoming opponents.
Spring-fed and a perfect 72 degrees year-round, the crystal clear San Marcos River is an oasis right in the center of Texas. Tube the falls, kayak for miles, or snorkel its depths. San Marcos, Texas. We'd love your company.
We're here with Texas State head coach Dennis Franchione, who's going to recap last week's victory over Idaho as well as preview next week's game against UL Lafayette. And Coach, again, similar style game to the last couple of games with Illinois and Tulsa, but you guys were able to get it done in the end there and come up with a few plays that you needed. Were you impressed with what you guys were able to do last week?
I really compliment our team for the fight and grit and determination and next play attitude. And when your defense has played 200 snaps in the last 2 games and to keep fighting like they did, that's been the key to us being at a 3-2 at this point in time.
Sure, and of course we reminisce not to talk about what Terrence Franks did on Saturday. He was telling us earlier today that he's never had a game kind of like that where he didn't get touched at all by any of their defenders. Talk about how many, the holes that he had and what he was able to do on Saturday against Idaho.
Well, obviously the offensive line did a nice job for him on those runs, and the receivers on the perimeter, and Terrence did the rest, and he's got that kind of explosive speed that he can make things like that happen. And not very many times in my coaching career have I seen a guy go 70 and then the next snap that he got the ball go 90 or 94 for a touchdown like he did. So we didn't run many plays, but we got a lot of points out of him, so that was the important thing.
Sure, and when he gets in the open field like that, do you ever think anyone's going to catch him?
The first 2, you pretty well kind of thought he was going to the house. The third one, I thought there was a guy with an angle that might catch him, and he reached down and got a little extra gear, and it just exploded past the guy and made it into another touchdown.
Sure, and this upcoming Tuesday, in about 6 days from now, we're going to see you guys are going to play UL Lafayette, the preseason Sun Belt favorites before the season, but they're off to a little bit of a slow start. They're 2-3 this season. What have you seen from them? Maybe what they haven't been able to do, what they were able to do last year.
Well, they started the year with 19 of their 22 starters returning from a team that spanked us pretty good last year. I think they're where they're at today. Primarily, they were -9 in turnover ratio in the first 4 games, and then they played a tough schedule. They got upset, or at least upset in my mind, by Louisiana Tech, and then had to play Ole Miss and Boise State at Boise State. So Ole Miss is number 4 in the nation. So that was a pretty tough grind to go through, and they bounced back and got a good win to start Sun Belt play last week.
Sure, and finally, it's going to be a nice showcase game for your team. It's on ESPN2, probably the only college football game that night. Do you think you get the sense your guys are excited for this opportunity for them?
You know, if they don't get excited about being the only game on national television, I don't know what to do with them. I know they will be, and what a great opportunity for San Marcos and Texas State and our football program to have an opportunity to maybe capture the platform for college football for an evening and be able to showcase all those areas. And we have so much to be proud of here, and so many good things about our university and our town and our community that it's a great opportunity, and I know we'll put our best foot forward.
Thanks a lot, Coach.
All right, thank you.
We just heard from Texas State head coach Dennis Franchione talking about this upcoming Tuesday's matchup against UL Lafayette. We're going to, of course, break down a little bit more about the Raging Cajuns. And before the season, I think everyone thought this was probably going to be one of the major games for Texas State, an opportunity on a Tuesday night, primetime TV on ESPN2, against really, as we all know, the preseason favorites to win the Sun Belt. But, Ish, they're not really looking like they're living up to hype so far from Lafayette. It seems like other teams have sort of asserted themselves in the Sun Belt, and it's a wide open race at this point in time.
Yeah, we thought Lafayette would kind of run away with it. We thought at one point they would probably be ranked this season. I know last year they were trying to appeal the New Orleans Bowl, trying to get a bigger bowl this season with Terrence Broadway coming back, Alonzo Harris, Elijah McGuire, all those guys coming back. It looked like, they're poised for their third straight Sun Belt title, but they haven't shown the dominance that they were predicted to show. The conference seems wide open. The newcomers, Georgia Southern, seems like they're holding their own right away. Even some of the lowly teams like Georgia State's showing some fight. They're showing a lot more grit than I think teams gave them credit for, and the top teams like Monroe's or Lafayette's aren't showing as much dominance as we probably thought.
Sure, and before this weekend, of course, Lafayette played against Georgia State. They won 34-31, but I thought before the weekend this was an opportunity maybe we'd see the real Raging Cajuns come out and play a serious game and really show the progress that they've made. But it was interesting. Before the season, I talked to head coach Mark Hudspeth from UL Lafayette, and he told me, yes, it's the same team. We've got Broadway back, we've got Harris back, we've got McGuire back, but we lost a bunch of glue guys. Some of those guys maybe on the offensive line, on defense, and maybe that's what they're missing, those small guys that maybe you don't see as big of an impact on the stat sheet, but they mean something in the grand scheme of things, because from what it looks like, they just haven't shown what we would quite expect from them. And Coach Franchione talked about it a little bit at his press conference after the game against Idaho. He's expecting at some point we're going to see the real UL Lafayette, and I think we're all waiting for it to happen, and you never know, this could be the game that it does happen. From what I expect Lafayette to do, they'll probably try to run the ball against Texas State, try to dominate the clock. It seems like teams have had success with that. And I think, do you think that's going to be something that Texas State's going to see from, you watched them last year, that they might see that be the game plan from Lafayette in this game? I
think so. They've seen these past couple of games where Texas State struggled against the run. They defended the pass fairly well, but I think that they're going to try to take advantage. Last season was the same way. They would hit them with the run, and then Terrence Broadway would hit them with the big 40-yard pass over the top, because Texas State would be fatigued from what I like to call the body blow theory, or not what I would like to call, what Bruce Feldman from CBS Sports likes to call. I don't want to take his thing. Once a team comes off a week where they face a running team that goes at them, they're fatigued and they're beat down. It came from, I believe the theory came from USC playing Stanford and losing the game after Stanford. When you play a physical team like that, and I think Texas State coming off these 3 games where they were played hard, and coming off Navy, coming off Illinois, coming off Idaho, teams that weren't afraid to run the ball at them, and coming into Lafayette, I think there's some fatigue issues that Coach Fran's going to have to settle with. And the 10 days are going to help. They need this rest. But eventually, if there's a stage for Lafayette to prove that they were the preseason favorites, it's the game on ESPN2 where all the nation's going to be watching, because there's no other football on except that game.
Sure, and I think the next 2 weeks could go a big way to deciding the Sun Belt. Lafayette actually plays 2 straight Tuesday night games. They play Texas State, followed by Arkansas State. For my money, I think the Red Wolves are probably the best team in the Sun Belt right now. They came off a really impressive win against UL Monroe. They really didn't allow the Warhawks in that game whatsoever. They ended up winning 28-14. Really wasn't that close, though, for the most part of the game from what I read and from watching some highlights from the game. So I think that's going to be, these next 2 weeks, we're going to really find out where the Sun Belt stands. And I think we'll have a better idea projecting for the rest of the season where Texas State stands and where the rest of the Sun Belt and who is going to come out as the ultimate champion of this league. But to switch gears, we're going to talk a little bit about the Rattlers now, and they have Floresville this weekend, which, you know, this is another big game for them, an opportunity to maybe get themselves back in the playoff race, because as you're looking at, they're running out of those opportunities against teams that you figure they have a good chance of beating.
Yeah, this is definitely one of those teams, you know, the Floresville hovering around 500 most of the season. This is going to be the chance for the Rattlers, because they have the tough game against, you know, I guess the elephant in the room, Kerrville-Tivy, coming up. And so I'd say that this is their chance to get that momentum back, to face, you know, to get the running game back under them, to get the confidence back with the guys. I think it's actually done a flip-flop. I think the defense has a lot more confidence right now, and it's time for that offense just to get the confidence back up to on equal level, because that Memorial game was the only game where we've seen the confidence and the performance at the same time on the same level. And I think that this is another chance for them to do that.
Sure, and we're going to wrap it up, folks, for this week for Sports and Joe and Ish. Of course, you can check every Wednesday on sanmarcosrecord.com, and it'll be posted up there. Be sure to check it out, and we appreciate you guys continuing to watch and continuing to let us talk about the Rattlers and the Bobcats. So for Joe and Ish, we're signing off.